Hi guys, welcome to lesson 6 on externalities. The free market is determined by the interaction between demand and supply. There is little or no government intervention and firms compete against each other. This increased competition may be good for keeping prices low for consumers. And innovation increases the choice available to consumers. When the free market fails to allocate resources efficiently, this is called market failure. In the next few videos, we'll take a closer look at these market failures in closer detail. They include externalities, public goods, merit goods, monopoly, and imperfect information. When markets fail, the government can intervene, but remember, they can also fail in their intervention. So what are externalities? They are either costs or benefits which spill over to a third party which is external to the market transaction. An internal externality would only affect the producer and consumer, the two economic agents in the transaction. However, there is also a cost or benefit on an external party which the two economic agents have not taken into account. The first graph we will look at are negative externalities in production. Here, the economic agents have failed to take into account the social cost of their transaction. An example would be taking a plane to go on holiday. Passengers may not take into account the environmental damage caused by taking that flight. The formula for marginal social cost is marginal private cost plus marginal external cost. Marginal refers to the extra cost or benefit from producing or consuming an extra unit. Private costs are paid by the producer or consumer, and external costs are paid by society. Let's draw the graph for negative externalities in production. We can see that as quantity increases, so does the difference between marginal social cost and marginal private cost. This difference is called the marginal external cost. At point Q1, resources are allocated efficiently. This is known as the optimal allocation point because marginal social cost is equal to marginal social benefit. However, we can see that the market allocation is at point Q2. This is where marginal social cost exceeds marginal private cost. And the orange triangle represents the welfare or deadweight loss due to overproduction. Remember, there will always be a welfare loss if there is an over or underproduction. Examples of negative externalities in production include air pollution and noise and water pollution. Graph 2 takes a look at positive externalities in production. Here, the marginal private cost exceeds the marginal social cost. The social and optimum allocation would be at point B, as this is where marginal social cost equals marginal social benefit. However, the market allocation is at Q2, where marginal private cost is equal to marginal private benefit. There is a misallocation of resources and an underproduction in goods, so the triangle represents the welfare loss. So negative externalities in production fail to take into account the external cost on the third party. In contrast, positive externalities in production fail to take into account the benefit on third parties. An example would be a first aid training course provided to factory workers. This will help staff members in the factory, but also it may help save lives outside of the factory, so there is a third-party spillover effect. Now let's move on to externalities in consumption. We refer to the formula marginal social benefit equals marginal private benefit plus marginal external benefit. The graph for negative externalities in consumption is when marginal private benefit exceeds marginal social benefit, and Q1 is the optimal social allocation. But the market allocation is at point Q2, where marginal private benefit is equal to marginal private cost. There is an overconsumption, and this generates a welfare loss to society, which is represented by the triangle. An example of negative externality in consumption would be passive smoking. And the final graph we will look at are positive externalities in consumption. So here we have an external benefit to a third party, so marginal social benefit is greater than marginal private benefit. So when looking for the social optimum, we always need to find the marginal social cost or benefit, and when these two are equal. We can see that at point A, this is the optimal social allocation. However, the market allocation at Q2, there is an underconsumption of the good, and therefore a welfare loss. Typical examples include vaccinations and education. Let's summarize. So externalities cause market failures because there is either an over or underconsumption or an over or underproduction of a product or service. And the market allocation does not take into account the full cost or benefit to society, resulting in a welfare loss. Negative externalities in production have a social cost exceeding the private cost. In contrast, for positive externalities in production, the private cost exceeds the social cost. For negative externalities in consumption, the marginal private benefit exceeds the marginal social benefit. And for positive externalities in consumption, the marginal social benefit exceeds the marginal private benefit.